Phil, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
And I want to just say, as someone born in Texas, thank you very much for this, because this is an amazing treasure to have returning to Texas.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's funny because I'm just as pleased to give it to the Alamo as you guys are pleased to accept it. I mean, I was looking for. I had been leisurely, in a leisurely fashion, looking for something to do with it. I mean, the fun has been collected, but I was looking for something to do with it as time was going on, and someone like me, my kind of affairs are kind of complicated. Someone says you should start thinking about getting a will together, and it's kind of morbid, but you start thinking, okay, well, I guess I should. My God, what's going to happen to that?
Right.
So I started to look at museums, and I mean, I live a lot of the time in New York, and there's a history museum, a historical museum in New York. I thought maybe that's just down the road from me. Doesn't fit, some in Texas, obviously. So I started to look around, but then when the people at the Alamo came to me and said, we would like it, I said, my God, I never even thought of it, because there's never been that much space here to have something, even though it's the perfect place. So with the kind of new activity here for the last couple of years in kind of reinvigorating the site and trying to make something more happen here than just this church and the long barracks. It turns out that they're thinking of building a visitor centre / museum, and this would be the focal point. And for me, it's very important that the display has the entire collection. We're all happy. It's a no-brainer.
You mentioned that in the press conference earlier that it basically resides in your basement in your home in Switzerland. I'm picturing this has to be a pretty safe and secure basement with a high-tech security system.
Yeah. I always think I'm safe. I was just at a lunch break and I found my credit cards been fraud in South Africa with my credit card. I mean, it's just it's never happened to me before. Someone's been using my credit card information. So I guess as I'm sitting here, they could be hammering on the door in Switzerland. Yeah, of course it's alarmed. It's perfectly safe. There's people living there. It's coming in there every day. But yeah, it's in the basement. It starts off with a few things on the wall, and then suddenly there's a lot of things on the wall, and then there's a few things on tables, and then it's well, I get a display case. Now it's a museum. I mean, my kids go there, and they're really the only people that see it. They come down and say, wow, Dad, it looks like a museum now. And, that's all going to come to a happy end because it's going to come here.
You mentioned earlier as well that your first visit here was 1973?
Yeah.
What does this building, being inside of this building, mean to you inside of this structure?
Well, you're not even allowed to take photographs in here, and here we are, with cameras rolling. It is extraordinary. I mean, I know Dr. Winders, who's the curator. I know him very well. He wrote the foreword for my book, and we've been on the book tour together. And he let me in here one night to take photographs. I just felt honoured, privileged being able to do that. And to be honest, I used to walk around here on the site, the Alamo guards. I knew them by name, they knew me by name. They know my interest.
Right.
And I feel like I'm part of the family. I know it sounds a little hokey probably, but I really do. I'm here for all the right reasons. I'm not Phil Collins pop star when I come here. I'm just Phil Collins lover of the Alamo, and the history. So it's a nice feeling, and I really, this isn't a business transaction.
Right.
We haven't even signed an agreement, which I'm sure there will be.
Right.
But we haven't signed it. I just said, yeah, I got no problem with you guys having it as long as you display it all. And it's been that easy.
I think this is going to do a lot to help educating people about Texas history. My daughter's 4, in the 4th grade, so this year, her and I at the table doing homework, we went through Texas history. And I was thinking to myself, Mr. Patterson mentioned it in the news conference, you know more than
It's a
99.9%
shame, but that's
of
true.
the average Texan. And I'm thinking to myself as we're driving in from Houston, the last time I was in this building, I was 9. That was 40 years ago. I'm thinking, why haven't I been back? It's
Yeah.
right here.
Well, but that's true. I mean, I'm a Londoner. You know, my dad used to take me to the Tower of London, which God knows has enough history.
It's awesome.
But I never thought about going back there until I had relatives in or friends in that wanted to go, and then I would go, and then I'd say, well, I had my 60th birthday. We did a tour of the Tower of London. You know, it was a quirky kind of thing to do. We did the London Eye.
Right.
We did the Tower of London, and it still has things that fascinate you. I took my kids to the London Dungeon, which I'd never been to, just last week in London. Yeah, it's easy when you live there. You just take it for granted, you know. And it is quite alarming to think that there's a lot of people here in San Antonio that don't really know. They're aware of it. Of course, they know the Alamo because of the shape, you know, the facade, but they don't really know so much what happened here. If they do, they just know the greatest hits of the story, and it's far deeper than that. You know, I mean, Hollywood has done, in some respects, a disservice to the story by making it so oversimplified. They tried to get deeper with the last movie, you know, and they succeeded in that, going, you know, below the surface that John Wayne chipped away at.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of things to learn, and you know, this is, you know, there was as many Hispanic guys fighting the Mexicans as there were Anglos. You know, it's something you really come to understand if you spend time in it.
When Alamo and Beyond came out, and the first time we had a chance to talk, that's the first time
That was in Houston, right?
It was in Houston, yeah. That was the first time I was aware of you as a collector, that I'd heard about the collection and your passion for it. After the book comes out, what was the reaction like? Were people coming to you with, I have artifacts, or did it just open a Pandora's box?
Well, the first, I mean, you know, there's a handful of people, a small handful of people that I have that are friends that actually put things my way, you know. That's how the collection has grown. Yeah, someone will say, you know, I've had a cannonball, I've had this 2-pounder ball for many years, but it seems that you're a good guy, it seems it will be going to a good home, we're going to send it to you. You know, sometimes things happen like that. People know I'm serious now, so they're more happy to part with something as opposed to sort of they'll give it to me or sell it to me, then they're going to see it on eBay, you know. I mean, what comes to me stays with me, you know. I don't ever sell anything on. I only buy things that are of interest. There's lots of things out there I've been offered that I hadn't bought, either because I felt that they were just too expensive, or maybe they just couldn't be proved that they were what they were supposed to be. And I have bought a lot of expensive items, but I've also, I don't go through that process with money to burn, you know. To me, it's got to be something that moves or touches me. And that's why something like a receipt for a saddle, which is one of my early pieces that I bought, is very profound. You know, this courier that went out and back, ended up serving at San Jacinto because he was out when the Alamo fell. He had to sell his saddle that had done all those miles for Texas. He actually, John W. Smith, was the first Anglo mayor of San Antonio. Most people never heard of him. You know, it's things that are really, wow, I get touched by that particular piece of the story.
And you'd mentioned there's no image of him.
Well, there were two relatives of his here today at the press conference outside. I don't know if I'll get a chance to see them. They said there are images, you know. There is no known image that I have found.
Right.
But obviously family are different. You know.
Right.
But there's the image of his wife, pretty ferocious looking woman actually, but none of him. And when he was mayor, it was probably the dawn of the age of photography.
Those were pretty tough times. I think women had to be a little tougher back then.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
lends to the ferocity. Can we talk about one of the maybe one of the swords
Sure.
that you've brought along, and you can just hold it as
Yeah.
as we talk.
Well, this is a sword that was on the. It's not the official term for it, but on the spine of the sword is J. Bowie. And we've had metallurgical tests done on this, and the engraving was shown to be done at the same time as the sword was made, which is the 1820s,
It matches up.
1830s. So it wasn't an addition. And this sword I have provenance for it from San Jacinto, where obviously a Mexican soldier took it as booty, and when the Mexican army was defeated at San Jacinto, all the weapons, muskets, knives, swords were confiscated. And General Houston had a little auction amongst the officers. And somehow this Private Johnson got involved in the auction. And I have the documents that show a Private Johnson bidding for this sword.
Wow.
So it came from here, it's Jim Bowie's, and there will always be people that would argue that no, it isn't. But there's Bowie's name on it, and I have provenance from San Jacinto, so it was here. And there was a lot of souvenir hunting by the Mexican army, you know. Some people would call it looting, but I prefer to call it souvenir hunting. You know, they were very poorly paid, poorly dressed army, and they, you know, some of these pieces were much more than they could ever afford to own or have made. So they collected them, you know, they took them and they took them back to their families. And I've got a sword that was supposed to be Bonham's sword from the Alamo, because family history says that grandfather told this story that he was at the Alamo and he took this sword off.
Right. Because of the movie, and obviously, you know, being a fan of Davy Crockett as a child, and you'd mentioned that made you fall in love with the story. As you researched, as your collection grew, as you acquired pieces, any of the other battles, like you said, leading up to this, it's not just about the Alamo, you know, San Jacinto, Goliad, any of them have particular interest, or you?
Well, particularly from this Goliad, you know, I've got lots of pieces from the Goliad fort and the executions there, and I've actually got a letter written and signed by Portilla, who was the commander there, telling him that he had to execute all the Texans. And I have his reply back saying, I can't do this, but he was under orders. So, yeah, I've got a lot of things from Goliad and a lot of things from San Jacinto. Because one thing leads to another. Originally, my umbrella was just the Alamo, but it can't be just that, because so many things led to it, and so many things led from it. And one thing I always kind of say is that a lot of people who don't understand the significance of what happened here in Texas is that if what happened here and in San Jacinto and Goliad hadn't happened, Texas would be part of Mexico now. I mean, whether it still would be now is, but had those events not happened, Texas would be part of Mexico, and Mexico would be a very different country. You'd have all the oil and a huge land mass and parts of California. America would be a very different place, and so would Mexico.
A very different story indeed. All right, last question, because I know you've been at this
I don't want to get too heavy.
all morning long. So, and you'd said that in your mind, the deal's already been done.
Yeah.
It's already been handed over. It's going to a proper home. So when it's finally shipped off and the last box leaves Switzerland, how do you think you're going to feel?
I would feel saddened if it wasn't coming here. You know, and I know it sounds like, well, you know, it's something you're bound to say, but if it was going to a museum, I would feel like I was handing it over to a museum that maybe didn't have quite so much vested interest in preserving the history as I did. And I'm really over the moon that it's coming here, because the people here and the people that are involved with the Alamo and maintaining it as a historical Texas site are as vested as I am in having that information out there, of luring people to this place to find out more. I couldn't be happy, you know.
Well, we couldn't be happier to have it in the state.
Well, that's what's so great about it, because I'm happy that it's coming here and they're happy to have it. So.
Thank you for the time. Thank you for the gift.
You're welcome.
Pleasure to see you.